But I said, if you gave me Mahomes, if you gave me Lamar Jackson with his great legs and Mahomes' great arm, or you gave me Baker Mayfield, who would I want? I would want Baker Mayfield, and the reason why is because Baker Mayfield.
I really think that now this is the worst case scenario for the San Francisco 49ers, is that they're going to have to cut ties with Jimmy Garoppolo if I were them. What? Oh my God! Wow, man!
In any event, Kyle Gibson is definitely my NL Cy Young Award winner. Rock on, Gibby.
And even no way! Oh my God! Hey, what's going on, everybody? And I hope you guys are all having a great Wednesday, and welcome into another episode of Sports Weekly here on the IM6 Network, as well as the MI6 Sports Network. We haven't done a show in quite some time, but I decided, you know what, we got to do one tonight because there's been a lot of stuff happening in the world of basketball, world of baseball, as well as the football world as well, and the hockey world as well. As we had a great game for tonight between the Oilers and the Dallas Stars. But before we get into it, I just want to welcome my guy Ben Cruz to the show, man. Ben, first off, congratulations to your Celtics on advancing to the NBA Finals. I watched the three of the four games that the Celtics played the Pacers. It was absolutely incredible and unbelievable. The down the stretch, the way you guys came back. But yeah, congratulations to the Celtics on advancing to the NBA Finals. And how are you doing tonight, my friend?
Yeah, Isaiah, it's good to be back. I know we haven't done a show in a while. I've been really busy with just working and with my other program. We've been doing a ton of watch parties with my other show. It's been a ton of fun. Shout out to the fam over there as well. But no, it's good to be back tonight. I haven't done a show on my end. Make sure to reach out for that, because I'll make sure to do one, especially now with the playoffs kind of coming closer to an end. I want to say end yet because we saw the finals, but we have a little bit more of a break. At least for the last 3-4 weeks, it was just a game, day off, game. And now, obviously, with the Eastern Conference Finals, which we'll talk about a little bit, pretty much already being at an end. And thanks, Isaiah, for congratulating me. Definitely proud of the guys. I'll talk a little bit more in a little bit. But you have Western Conference Finals, which will be done within either tomorrow or the next day. So, trying to watch some baseball and trying to catch up on some other sports I haven't really been watching as much, a little bit more hockey. Yeah, I'm doing good outside of that. The weather's gotten a lot better. Hope you had a good Memorial Day weekend this past weekend. And crazy to think we're almost already in June for 2024. That
Right.
it just does not feel like, I felt like the beginning of the year still is kind of with us. And now we're almost at summer, which I guess I can say it does feel great to have kind of summer coming along, especially in the Northeast, where it's just like, I know over in the West Coast there, you get a ton of warm weather more consistently. And the Northeast specifically, I love the Four Seasons, but man, when it comes to that warm weather, nothing beats it for sure. So we're right now having around mid-70s almost every single day, and especially when you have a job, especially where we work outside a lot too, like myself, it definitely helps a lot as well. So I'm doing well for the most part, and I'm excited to talk some sports with you and definitely catch up for sure.
Yeah, definitely. You're right. It's crazy. I mean, because think about, it felt like we were just starting the year like just not so long ago, and then now we're all the way in June, and almost June, and we're about to almost crown an NBA champion. So it's just crazy how time has flown by, and then sure enough, in a month and a half, I mean, we're gonna have training camps starting up in the NFL, and then we're gonna start talking.
100-day countdown yesterday I saw. So
yeah, I mean, we're gonna
days
start
now.
exactly. We're gonna 100 days. We're gonna start talking about preseason football soon. I might be going to a Seahawks preseason game maybe sometime in August. Who knows? But I mean, it's definitely crazy how time has flown by. But Yes. For all the fans that are watching, feel free to fire away in the comment section. You want to talk about the hockey game tonight? You want to talk about the basketball stuff, off the court stuff, football stuff? Feel free to fire away in the comment section, and then we'll read your comments live on the air. But Ben, let's start off in basketball, but not about the Celtics for a little bit. We do have to get into some really sad news that happened a couple of days ago, and that is basketball legend and broadcasting icon Bill Walton sadly passed away at the age of 71 of cancer. Cancer takes another great person, great human being, sadly. Bill Walton, I know he played for the Celtics, won championships with the Celtics. He also played for the Clippers as well as the Blazers, and also here in California in UCLA. I would say my overall thoughts is definitely very shocking, very sad news to take in. When I saw the news from Adrian Wojnarowski, I was actually heading home from work because I started at 5 in the morning that day, and I got off work and was going to grab some food beforehand and was just looking at Twitter because I've been very into to try to see if the Pistons would fire Monty Williams, which we'll talk about later on in the show. So I kept refreshing Twitter, and then I got a notification from Woj, and actually I got very excited because I thought, oh my God, the Pistons fired Monty Williams. But it was the sad news that Bill Walton passed away, and very unexpected. I think I took a step back and I was like, wow, Bill Walton's really, really gone. Like he's really, really gone. And it definitely felt unreal for sure. And I mean, I didn't really get to watch him play a lot because when I was born, he was already retired. But um, for me, I remember him most for his broadcasting. I mean, this dude, like, just so many great moments. Like, he was broadcasting a college basketball game, and then all of a sudden, instead of blowing out the candle on the cupcake, he eats the whole cupcake with the candle in it. I mean, it was just such great memories like that. And I remember another one where I was watching, and I forgot who was playing, but he literally to put on a Grateful Dead tie dye shirt, he took off his shirt live on the air, and you just see the woman behind him just going like making this weird face and just going like, what just happened? And yeah, like just a lot of just crazy funny memories from Bill Walton that I will remember. I mean, this dude was just he lived life to the fullest, and he definitely lived a very happy life. It just sucks that he's just gone way too soon. I mean, this guy lived 71, could have lived at least another 20 plus years, and you know he would have provided us with so many memories. But yeah, just definitely very, very sad. Rest in peace to Bill Walton. Condolences to Luke and the rest of the Walton family. I know I was watching a little old video from CBS San Diego that was interviewing Bill Walton and his kids when his kids were so young and they were playing like such physical basketball on the family court. I mean, it was just such great moments like that. But I mean, Bill Walton, we will never have another Bill Walton. It was just, whenever he would broadcast games, you would just be like, I tune in because I want to see what he does on the air or what he says on the air. Because this dude was full of happiness. He was full of life. He was always positive, no matter what. And yeah, he's definitely going to be missed. And it's definitely very, very sad. And it's definitely just remind you, just hug your loved ones because you never know when they will be gone. And to always cherish life, and that's what Bill Walton did. So that's my thoughts on that. But Ben, what do you? Bill Walton sadly passed away, age of 71 on Tuesday. What's your reaction to the passing of Bill Walton?
Yeah, it's obviously it sucks. It's heartbreaking. I think it was actually Monday, I say, because I actually recall it being Monday because I was actually at work when I saw this news. So we were pretty much in reversal, kind of when we saw it, and I think it was actually on my meal break, by the way, during my work. So that's essentially how I found out when I was on Twitter. And I just had to kind of like you, I just kind of had to take a moment and just kind of tell myself that this is really it for him. I didn't really know specifically that he was kind of going through cancer. Just had no really idea about it. I really know. Obviously, I knew who Bill Walton was by all means for sure, but I didn't know him obviously at firsthand a lot, and I know that obviously he was going through some stuff, but I didn't really know how serious it was. But I was thinking about it at work on Monday when the Celtics obviously were playing the Pacers for a chance to win, to go to the NBA Finals, and I thought to myself, wouldn't it be special to find a way for the Celtics to? I obviously knew that up 3-0, they could have went for another game to try to close it here and there. I wasn't thinking they were going to have a sweep, and I'll talk about it a little bit, but I was like, if they could win this, but then win this for this guy and Bill Walton, who played for the Celtics, I bet he would have been very proud of this team. And so I think specifically the players, they probably found out about it. I think the whole NBA, basketball, sports. But I just thought specifically it was, sports can definitely be romantic and it can definitely be heartbreaking and touching at times. Just because you just never know. Like you said, it could be your last day on this earth, and obviously, like you said, to hug your loved ones every single day. I know obviously people say it's very cheesy here and there, but it's real because you just never know on yourself personally. So yeah, it really sucks for them. Obviously, my condolences to the Walton family, to Luke, and to everybody else. And yeah, just it sucks. Cancer sucks, and yeah, just it's really really tough.
Yeah, I mean, you could not have said it any better, Ben. I do apologize. It was Monday. I've gotten, work has definitely fried me, but yeah, it was Monday when he passed. But I was reading some stuff. Like you, I did not know that he was that sick. I didn't even know he was dealing with cancer, in the first place until he passed away because of the cancer. But like you said, sports can be very romantic. Um, he was, whenever you think about Pac-12, right? You think about Bill Walton, and the Pac-12 sadly is no longer going to be a conference, and now with Walton passing away, it's just heartbreaking to think about how those two are linked. And so, yeah, rest in peace to the Walton fam. I mean, to Bill Walton, and condolences go out to the Walton family. Definitely praying for them as they go through this very very tough and difficult time, for sure. But let's get into the NBA topic. Let's get into your Boston Celtics, Ben. The Boston Celtics, folks, are headed back to the NBA Finals for the first time since 2022. They sweep the Indiana Pacers. Derek White hits a game-winning three with about 17.9 seconds left to help them complete the comeback, and Drew Holiday gets a clutch rebound, I think with about 5 to 6 seconds left, to prevent the Pacers from having a chance to potentially tie the game after Jayson Tatum missed a three. Ben, I would say, before I go to you, I would say my overall thoughts is congratulations to Boston, but I think Indiana, I have never seen a team, Ben, like Indiana, that choked away 3 of the 4 games like they did. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just mind-boggling. Like game one, for you to, like, they should have won that game. I mean, for them to have 3 timeouts to start off with and then not even call any of the timeouts, for a coach like, if this was like Darvin Ham, right, I would understand. If this was like a rookie head coach, I would understand. But this is Rick Carlisle, for crying out loud. Like, you're a championship coach. How do you forget you have 3 timeouts and not call it in that situation to make that inbounds pass easier? And
Yep.
then, this, I think it was game 3. They have an 18-point lead. They had a 12-point lead with like a minute 15 seconds to go in the game. Like, you're supposed to win that type of game. And then in game 4, I mean, you were leading throughout that game. You're up by like at least 10, I think, with about a minute to go. And that, like, the last couple of possessions, like, it was just awful, from an offensive standpoint, from Rick Carlisle and the Indiana Pacers. Like, I don't know, like, what happened. Rick Carlisle obviously had bad brain farts at the worst possible time, but it was just insane, like watching it, how consistently the Pacers just choked it away. Like I just could not believe what I was seeing, and it was definitely mind blowing for sure. But credit to Jayson Tatum and the Celtics. They made timely plays after timely plays, both offensively and defensively down the stretch to help them win. I mean, this narrative that Tatum chokes games and Jaylen Brown chokes games, I mean, it might happen still, but I mean, they came through in the clutch in these type of moments when they, in the past probably wouldn't. So congratulations to the Celtics. Tatum was not the best in this series, but everybody else came up big, and it's definitely going to be fun to see them in the NBA Finals. But Ben, I'll give the floor to you for this topic. What's your overall thoughts on your Celtics advancing to another NBA Finals and have a great shot now at winning ring number 18?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. I know we haven't really talked because in a long time, because obviously we've just been so busy. But feels great to be back in the NBA Finals. Last time obviously was against Golden State in 2021. Yeah, pretty sure 2021, 2022. So it doesn't feel like a long time ago, but it feels like a long time in terms of when we've won one. And, coming into the season, obviously Brad Stevens, the way that last season ended, being down 3-0, coming back from 3-3 to make it almost an improbable comeback just to fall short and get our asses just cooked at home to a Heat team that you should have beaten. And then obviously the offseason, Brooke Grossbeck decided to go out, get Drew Holiday, move on from Marcus Smart, get Kristaps Porzingis, and I think a lot of people are pretty much at this point saying championship or bust in terms of all the pieces that are there. But until it's proven otherwise, people say it, soft narratives here and there about Tatum and Brown, all this and that. But just and I'll talk about the playoffs because I know a lot of people have been talking about the Celtics run as being kind of a fluky type of thing, and I'll talk a little bit in terms of my overall thoughts about it. But yeah, just it feels surreal. I mean, I remember on my stream when I was watching it on Monday that when Drew Holiday got that offensive rebound after Tatum missed it, because theoretically Indiana still had a chance if they got the rebound. I think with around 5 seconds left. To tie that game, and they had a very similar situation actually in Game 3, where they had the chance to tie it and they just came a little short. So, I just want to really quickly say, my shout out to Indiana. Despite the fact that they choked those games, I give a ton of respect for that team. In terms of the way that they grinded, and I'll talk about them in a little bit as well. But you know what, Isaiah? Because we're gonna have some fun tonight. How about sweepage? The Boston Celtics sweep the Indiana Pacers. Gotta love it. We go to the NBA Finals. I don't know the last time a team in the Eastern Conference Finals has had a sweep to go to the NBA Finals. And, if it's been a while, I don't know when it was. But, man, just it feels great. And, Joe Mazzulla, obviously, I think a lot of people have to give him some credit, including myself. A lot of people thought that he was just kind of over the top and this and that. But I thought this playoffs year was fantastic all along. I thought that he really did a really good job of containing runs, something that I really struggled with last year. And I thought overall, I mean, Tatum, obviously, he had a fantastic game, I believe, in game 3. Yeah, game 3. He had no turnovers. He had 36 points. Jaylen Brown, though, everybody has to start giving Jaylen Brown his respect. This guy specifically, they paid him $300 million. A lot of people are saying he doesn't have a left hand, this and that. And he just shut everybody up specifically and won the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. It was a close overall call with him over Tatum, I think 5-4. Yeah, just the overall journey, and there's just so many things I could say about. Obviously, Miami, the first match, which I think was a really good thing for this team. I think they had to be kind of, facing a hard, gritty nose type team right away. And obviously know that Jimmy Butler was out. That's obviously kind of what I'll talk about a little bit in terms of some guys out, this and that. But the scheme that Miami has against the Celtics in the last couple of years has just been so tough, regardless of who's out there or not. And they were able to win that series in 5 games. And then the next series obviously was the Cavs. I think a lot of people, Cavs really their defense wasn't as good, but they had some guys like Mitchell and Garland that were going to give I think the Celtics some issues. But obviously Mitchell going down the last couple. I thought the Cavs, the 3 and 4 games were really close games. The Celtics really had to clutch up at the end. And then Game 5, I pretty much pulled away. And then Indiana. Indiana obviously they didn't really have the premier type of stars, maybe like the Cavs would have with Mitchell and, obviously Butler obviously being up with him and Adebayo. But they still have a lot of great playmakers there. I mean, Rick Carlisle obviously doing a great job there. Halliburton, Turner, Siakam. And, I mean, that first game, I really thought that, Jaylen Brown obviously coming up with that massive 3, like you mentioned with Indiana. And I'll talk about the Celtics specifically with this series. But, everybody was talking about the Celtics series being easy. And in terms of, I won't say this series, but in terms of the overall, flukiness with some guys here and there. Listen, they got there. So what are they going to say now specifically? That's number one. Number two, the Celtics theoretically could be down 3-1 in this series. They could be down 3-1 specifically in this series. They were down in the fourth quarter, Isaiah, 3 of the 4 games to Indiana. They had to claw their way back. They essentially had to go claw their way back and steal these games. This is something that the Celtics teams in the past have not done before. They've been showing heart. They've been showing continuity. They've been showing belief. And this is something that I see this year that I've not seen in the last couple of years. So yeah, obviously Halliburton was out. That's massive, But when you see the overall actual physical games from this series, it wasn't like, oh yeah, blowout after blowout after blowout. That's one thing specifically. Like, all right, I can understand it. Halliburton being out, this and that, but sometimes, and Paul Pierce actually had a really good point on this on I don't know if it's Undisputed or whatever one of those shows on FS1. He said it's harder to game plan specifically when you're facing a team that you just don't know who kind of the head of the snake is per se. And really that head of the snake was Halliburton. So all in all, it was pretty much like, all right, now who we're going to have to kind of game plan for. And the Pacers did a really good job of having guys really step up. Nembhard, Nesmith, obviously Siakam was doing great. Turner obviously was doing his thing. So this was a really, really tough series the Celtics had to play against. And I thought specifically that, it was right down the wire every single game. They got through it specifically. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people are expecting the Pacers to win this overall series, but it's not like specifically you can look over and be like, well, they just absolutely wiped them off the floor. They had to pull away and grind at it. And I think specifically this is a really good thing when it comes down to for the finals for the Celtics is because now a lot of people are talking about, well, how the Celtics are a front-running type team that can't win these close games, that can't come from behind these close games, and you saw glimpses of it in this series against Indiana where they did a lot of things specifically, or coming back, or, getting big-time shots. Obviously, Tatum making some big-time plays in Game 3, Derek White obviously hitting that game corner 3, Drew Holiday making a steal in Game 3 to prevent the Pacers from winning it possibly, and then the Drew offensive rebound to continue the overall possession at the end in Game 4 for the Celtics to go to the NBA Finals. So I had at least 4 to 5 great points in there, I think personally, that you could tell me right now and be like, all right, the Celtics, their path is fluky, this and that. Nobody was expecting these injuries, 1. And 2, specifically, in the Eastern Conference Finals against Indiana, and which, by the way, they deserve to be there. After essentially looking at them against arguably the best team in the Eastern Conference, obviously with the Celtics being there, they deserve to be there. I think specifically if Halliburton did play, maybe they'd win probably a couple. I had the Pacers win at least a couple, kind of the way that I was looking at that. But the Celtics team, man, is just different. They're finding different ways to win games, and whether it's pretty, whether it's not pretty, they're finding ways to win. And that's obviously why I'm really proud of this team. And, obviously it sucks we kind of have to wait a little bit, but it's kind of refreshing in a way because as great as your team is to be in the playoffs, man, it can be stressful. It can be really, really stressful. Yep. And, obviously I had a ton of that stuff to just kind of say there, but I couldn't be any more proud of this team. Obviously to do it for Walton as well, like I mentioned earlier tonight. So just so many things to talk about, and definitely we'll talk about once we find out who we're playing in the finals. Who we thought we were going to figure out what was going to happen last night, and we have a pretty good idea who it's going to be. We'll talk more about the NBA matchup finals pretty soon. But yeah, really happy for the guys. 100% deserve it, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll definitely see what happens in the coming days as to who the Celtics will play. But congratulations to the Celtics advancing to the NBA Finals for the first time since 2022. But let's get into the other game, the Western Conference Finals. The Celtics trying to figure out who they are going to play in the NBA Finals. Is it going to be Luka and Dallas, which would be an unbelievable matchup, or is it going to be Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, and the Minnesota Timberwolves, and another series which could have gone into a sweep, Ben, but the Wolves, they come through. They finally pull through, and they actually steal a game in Dallas, and they help everybody else out by having we don't have to wait too long until another basketball game.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have another game this tomorrow night in Minnesota, the Wolves and the Dallas Mavericks game 5. The Wolves come away with game 4, a huge win. The Karl Anthony Towns with 25 points. He busted out of his shooting slump. Anthony Edwards with 29. But I think really, Ben, this came down to a lot of missed opportunities by the Mavericks. I mean, a lot of missed shots, missed free throws. Luka had a couple of missed free throws. Not having Derek Lively was huge in this game. But Ben, before I give it to you, I would say this. Congratulations to the Wolves for winning this game. And I think now we actually have a series. I think that the Dallas Mavericks, Ben, believe it or not, I never thought I would say this about a team that went up 3-0. I think the Dallas Mavericks are teetering on the brink of disaster. Because if you look at the next two out of the next 3 games, it's in Minnesota. And that's a very, very difficult place to play. And so that's why I was saying Dallas has to close this out in game 4, because now if you give Minnesota life, you give them momentum. Well, you're going to go back to Minnesota for game 5 with that raucous crowd. I know Minnesota has lost 2 of the 2 games there in Minnesota, but still, that's a tough place to play. Karl Anthony Towns looks like he's figured it out. Anthony Edwards looks like he's figured it out. If Minnesota wins it tomorrow in game 5 and you're going back to Dallas for game 6, getting all the momentum to Minnesota, Ben, I have a bad feeling that the Dallas Mavericks might become the first team to choke a 3-0 lead, because if it's one thing to have game 5 and game 7 at your own home, but having it on the road, I think the Dallas Mavericks, they missed a great opportunity, Ben, and they are teetering on the brink of disaster. And when you look at, yes, Kyrie and Luka, they played awful yesterday. I think they will respond in game 5. We'll get into the game 5 predictions in a little bit, but this really came down to Kyrie and Luka having their worst game at the worst possible time. Not having Derek Lively did not help at all, but it also came down to the Mavericks really shooting themselves in the foot. Like a lot of open shots that they would typically make, they were missing. That 4-point play, which Luka unbelievably hit that 3 late. He couldn't connect on that free throw. If he connects there, the Wolves need to make 2 free throws instead of just 1 to put the game away. And then, Anthony Edwards, credit to him. I mean, him and Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert have not showed up down the stretch in a lot of these games, but they did. And, Gobert, huge rebounds, huge shots late in that game. Anthony Edwards, couple of huge shots. Karl Anthony Towns, 2 huge threes down the stretch in this game to give the Wolves the win. But now the Wolves have life, man, and that's the scariest part. If you give a team that's down life, going back to the opponent's home, I'm scared if I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan, because I could definitely see Dallas losing tomorrow, and not just losing, but getting blown off the floor with how raucous that environment is going to be. And then you're facing an absolutely must-win game 6 at home, which, yes, you're going back to Dallas, but we've seen it, which one game you absolutely have to win, because you don't want to go game 7 and then the
Oof.
opposing team has a great performance. Remember Game 6, Oklahoma City versus Golden State, which Oklahoma
Yep.
City was like, oh, yeah, we don't need Game 5 because, we'll go back home and close it out there. But Game 6, Klay Thompson showed up and showed out, and the Warriors ended up winning, and they came back from 3-1. So if I'm a Mavs fan, I'm scared to death over this. If I'm a Wolves fan, I'm really confident. I think this was, this has been one of the better series that has not been like a 2-2 or Game 7 type of series. Like every game has literally come down to the wire. It could definitely be right now. It could definitely be like 2-2 going back to Minnesota. But for Dallas, they got to close it out. And they got to close it out tomorrow because I feel like they're staring at the brink of disaster. But, Ben, what do you think about the Wolves with a huge win in Game 4 over Dallas?
Yeah, I mean they obviously didn't get swept. I think a lot of people were expecting them to kind of fold over after the Mavs really kind of controlled the first 3 games of the series. Um, I think that the Wolves personally, I mean, Karl Anthony Towns, that was the biggest factor. He was finally able to get out of his shooting slump. Um, I I don't know if I'm going to go too far in terms of that Dallas is just done yet. I think specifically it's really hard to sweep series in the playoffs, and I think they just got another opportunity to find a way to go to the other team's place where the Mavs won a couple games already at that place. So I don't think that they're essentially afraid of this moment. Now, obviously, if it gets to if it goes to Game 6, then I think it's really anybody's series. Even if Dallas is up so 3-2, Game 6 then kind of goes into more of a must win because you don't want to have that Game 7 where I really don't think that location means anything. Game 7's really are for the marbles. It could just be one bad shooting night and your team could be done. So I think, yes, obviously, currently right now, I'm still not worried if I'm a Mavs fan. But the fact is that, this is more of a must win game now, if anything, to be like, all right, time to shut it out, time to shut the door. Because then if you go to Game 6, it's more panic mode. The longer that you go, the more belief that the other team has. Obviously, I know at first hand with the Red Sox being 0-4 against the Yankees, that's just one of the most improbable things. And, never say never. It's not over until the fat lady sings or whatever they call it. And, first team to 4. It's not first team to 3. And I thought that the Celtics did a really good job. I know obviously there were some chances in Indiana. I thought that they were gonna lose one, but they just never gave the Pacers life of like, all right, we're gonna go back to Boston and try to figure this thing out. They're just like, all right, we're gonna just finish it off early and that's that. And have all that rest in the world. So I think the Wolves specifically, they found a way to stay off elimination. I still think specifically that Kyrie and Luka weren't great shooting wise, and they were right there in the game. So I think specifically that kind of bodes well for Dallas to have a response in the next game. I thought that Anthony Edwards has been kind of more on the inconsistent side in this series compared to the series against Denver. So he's obviously going to have a massive game. Nas Reed, obviously, I think has been absolutely insane off the bench for them. Kyle Anderson's definitely been pitching in. So, like, they probably can make it close. I mean, the Wolves have done a really good job of that. They have actually been undefeated so far in this playoffs and elimination game. So they're not afraid, essentially, when their backs against the wall. But I do think that, and I know we're going to talk about a prediction in a little bit, but I do have Dallas finishing this off tomorrow. I think they essentially kind of saw that last game as a taste of bad blood, bad medicine, whatever you want to call it, and I think that they're going to win. I think that Luka's going to make some big time shots right at the end, and Kyrie, like they have been kind of early on in the series. And I think the Wolves are going to come a little bit short in this game, but I wouldn't be shocked if Minnesota extend this series to 6. I mean, heck, wouldn't it be awesome to just see more basketball than we maybe thought to have
Oh,
a
yeah.
Game 6? Just love to see that. And I also think for the Celtics, in terms of my case, the longer this series goes, the better for us because we get the more rest specifically than maybe a team like Minnesota, right? If they get this Dallas team to 6, then instead of it maybe being like 7 days rest, or obviously we're currently right now in like 9, 10 days rest. but they could be on like 5 days rest. And that might not mean much specifically, but for a team that obviously kind of finish off the series, right? And then they have like 1 or 2 days maybe to practice for the next spot for the finals. It doesn't feel like much. While the Celtics specifically have a couple of days to kind of, recuperate themselves. More likely than not, Kristaps Porzingis is going to be ready for game 1 and game 2. I just don't know in terms of how many minutes he's going to be on. We don't know about in terms of the Mavericks, about Lively's availability for tomorrow. We just don't know about that. So there's just so many storylines that we still kind of have to figure out. But yeah, the biggest thing right now is that the Wolves are able to avoid that elimination, which I predicted yesterday. I thought that they weren't going to go down without a fight, especially with the way that they've been playing all playoffs with their backs against the wall. But I do think specifically that Dallas finds a way to pull us out tomorrow and not give the Wolves any more life for the remainder of the series.
Yeah, and if they have to do that, I mean, if the Mavericks are able to put them out, then Kyrie and Luka have definitely got to have better games and respond after what they were awful down in game number 4. But Ben, let's go into our game 5 predictions. So the Wolves and the Mavericks will match up tomorrow night at the Target Center. Game 5. It should be a great one. It starts at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:30 p.m. on the West Coast on TNT. Man, it's gonna be a classic, I think, between the Wolves and the Mavericks. But Ben, before I give my prediction, let me hear your prediction first. Is Dallas gonna take out the Wolves and go to the NBA Finals and punch their ticket, or is Minnesota gonna live to see another day? Who do you have, my friend?
Going Dallas. I think that we get another conference finals where the away opponent celebrates on the other team's floor, and that will happen tomorrow. I think it's going to be a close game. I think the fans are going to be obviously raucous, like they have been over in a lot of environments. But Minnesota low-key has had a pretty good playoff environment that I've seen. But I think it's going to come down to execution at the end of these games. Karl-Anthony Towns, yes, he obviously had a great shooting game the other night, but more of this overall series with him, he's just been very up and down. So you just don't know in terms of how he's going to be playing. And then Anthony Edwards has just been very up and down, and Luka and Kyrie have just been a lot more consistent, despite their tough shooting night the other night. And I'm a little bit more in belief that they're going to win tomorrow. The fact that Kyrie and Luka's bad game, they still almost won. So essentially, they were pretty much right there in it, and just had a hard time executing a couple. I mean, if it didn't come down to maybe some free throws that they missed and this and that, they could have finished off the other night. But give credit to the Wolves, obviously, to stave off elimination, which they deserve to win that game for sure the other night. But I'm gonna go Dallas. I'm gonna say 1-0, 110, 1-0, 105. I think that Dallas wins by 5. I think it's going to come down to a couple big time layups or maybe a 3 here and there, and then a couple free throws to finish it off. And Dallas will go to play the Celtics in the NBA Finals, where I think we're going to have a ton of fun storylines. Of course, Kyrie taking on his former team that he essentially was promised that he would be playing for the long term. Obviously, him in Boston for games 1 and 2. I think that the fans are going to ask to be honest. You know what about? Obviously, Luka and the Tatum narratives would be so much fun. And I think specifically like Luka was saying too. Porzingis, him facing his former team. So yeah, I think specifically, and the Wolves, I think credit to them. I think that they've had a fantastic season. But it's just so tough when you put yourself in this type of hole down 3-0. It's so tough. I just in terms of the playoffs for yourself to make this specifically a case of maybe if it was 3-1, maybe I could go with Minnesota, but it was 3-0. Minnesota was able to pull this one out to kind of, I wouldn't say play for pride, but in other words, of like, all right, we're not getting swept. We're going to still keep on going. I obviously wouldn't be shocked if Minnesota won this and forced a game 6, but I'm going to go Dallas here. I think it's going to be a close one, like I said, and they punched their ticket to the big dance.
Ben, I think we're going to see a lot of drama tomorrow. I think that we're going to see, I think we're going to see that crowd in Minnesota be treated to a good one there But having said that, and I hope I'm wrong, I think the Wolves extend the series and they put max pressure on the Dallas Mavericks in game 6. I just, the home cooking, the home crowd. I know Dallas has won a couple of games there in Minnesota, but Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns, they were not good, especially in game number 2 there. They were awful. And I just don't see them that they're going to have a repeat of that performance. And I think that the Mavericks, sadly, have awakened the monster, and now the monster is going to feed, especially going back home with that raucous crowd. So I'm going to go with Minnesota to extend the series. I think that this comes down to a game 6 in Dallas on Saturday night, I believe, which it's going to be all the pressure is going to be on the world and Luka and Kyrie and Jason Kidd. And I know for a fact that you will be absolutely going wild if Kyrie and the Mavericks choke a 3-0 lead and actually lose it. But yeah, I'm going to go with Minnesota. I think that Minnesota ends up winning this. I think that Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, they're going to have great games. I think the loss of Derek Lively is really going to hurt, especially inside when you're dealing with those two bigs of Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. I think they're going to feast on the lack of interior defense from the Dallas Mavericks. So give me the Wolves. I think the Wolves actually win by 10. I think that it's not really going to be a close game. I think at first it's going to be close, but I think with the home cooking, with that home crowd, with that environment there in Minnesota, backs against the wall, I think Anthony Edwards puts up a performance for the ages that we're just like, wow, man, he refuses to lose. And I think it goes back to Dallas. And even though I think Luka and Kyrie will do everything they can, it's just the loss of Lively. That's going to change everything for the Dallas Mavericks. Now you don't have a guy that can guard Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. And it showed in game number 3. Gobert was able to get whatever he wanted down the stretch. Karl Anthony Towns was able to get whatever he wanted. Like, Gafford's a great player, don't get me wrong. And he's got great athleticism. He's got great bounce. But you could just see his lack of size, especially against Gobert, where he was 4 inches shorter than Gobert, and Gobert was just getting whatever he wanted, whether it was getting the ball into the hoop or whether it was getting fouled and going to the line. I think Jason Kidd's got to make that adjustment. You have to, whether it's Dwight Powell. I know Dwight Powell came in early. Kleber came in early, but he was kind of not effective. I think Jason Kidd's got to put more size in that court because you cannot let Rudy Gobert just punish and bully Daniel Gafford. He's a good defender, but when you're 4 inches shorter than your opponent, it doesn't matter how physical you are with them. They're just going to get their hoops because they're taller than you. So I'm going to go with Minnesota. I hope I'm wrong though, because I want to see Celtics Mavericks in the finals, but I'm going to go with Minnesota to win by 10 plus in that game.
Oh, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We do have a comment from Advent Traders. He says game 4 was only close because the Mavericks scored 30 plus points off of Wolves turnovers. If Minnesota limits the turnovers, they'll win tomorrow. Yes, that is true, but Avin, you do also got to take into account though that Kyrie and Luka had their absolutely worst games of the playoffs, and I don't know if they'll go cold tomorrow. If they do, then I think Minnesota wins handedly. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. It should be a very, very fun game. But appreciate the comment. But Ben, let's get into some off the court stuff because we talked about all the great stuff on the court, but I think this NBA offseason honestly is shaping up to be one of the craziest off seasons that we've seen in a long time. Whether it's coaches getting fired,
like the last 3-4 years.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, just think about this. Like, I don't want to go off topic, but think about the superstars that could be out there. I mean, Trae Young. DeJounte Murray, Jimmy Butler potentially. You have guys like, what's going to happen in Phoenix? KD might request a trade. Who knows if he declines the extension? Donovan Mitchell. I mean, Booker, exactly. There's like a lot of guys that potentially could be available that could just shake up this entire offseason. But man, let's get into, and I wish our guy James Gonzalez was on for this because I know he would have a lot of stuff to say about this. But following persistent rumors of him going to either the Lakers or the Phoenix Suns, the Clippers have reached a massive contract extension agreement with head coach Ty Lue. They have signed him for 5 years and $70 million. Thank you, Monty Williams, for getting all these coaches paid with your massive contract. But
Oh my
5 years, $70 million, Ben, for a coach that everybody thought might have gotten fired after the Mavericks beat the Clippers in that series. He's had consecutive early exits in the playoffs. Yes, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, either one or both of them have sat out from time to time in the playoffs. But what's your thoughts on the Clippers keeping Ty Lue and making him their coach of the future now on a 5-year, $70 million contract?
Yeah, that's a little much. Listen, I like Ty Lue a lot. But maybe you should have kind of looked at the overall offseason that this Clippers team was going to have in terms of your playmakers and kind of their situation before you kind of go with the coaching. Obviously with Harden, with Paul George, with some other guys specifically over there, Kawhi, of course, sometimes your stars should have an input in terms of the front office and what should happen, this and that. And obviously, ownership and front office have the the call. They have the decision. But when I heard you say, I know obviously knew that they
I'm sorry,
yeah.
James. I'm sorry.
I just don't know what to say about that. I mean, I think for in terms of when you look at coaches in sports specifically, um, it's like big contracts in a lot of players. You just really, unless you really fully trust the overall person itself, when you have a guy like Tyler, who I think is a very solid coach, but a guy that's had questions. Of course, he's had a couple early exits. You don't pay a guy 5 years and all that money. I'm sorry. I mean, you probably maybe couple like a short term. I'm fine with. Um, but I know obviously probably your Lakers. I say maybe kind of take a look at. I mean, you've probably been throwing up in your mouth if you ever saw something like that. Anything to avoid going to Lakers, that's true. But
Anyway, anything to avoid JJ Redick, to be honest.
um, but yeah, it's just absolutely ludicrous if you ask me. I think specifically they should have taken a look in terms of what their overall offseason was. I think they plugged they got really aggressive early and often, which I understand with a lot of these off seasons for basketball. But I just think that they pulled the plug really really early, and they just are like, all right, we're gonna just sign this guy and pay him all the buttload of money for what does he necessarily want over there? I mean, in terms of kind of what's going on. So I don't know. I really don't know what to say about that. Just 5 years and all that money. I'm sorry, James. That's all I'll say, my guy.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that this morning, I was like, James is probably going to be punching tables, breaking stuff, because I know how much he has not wanted Ty Lue to come back to coach the Clippers. And now Steve Ballmer and the Clippers give him a 5-year, $70 million deal, basically locking him down for the next several years of the
Oh,
Clippers. I mean, this is like a team that's just running around in circles. I mean, you've seen this core with Paul George and Kawhi. They haven't done anything. They've sat out a
hmm.
bunch of important games. Like Ty Lue, he's been there like now 3 to 4 years. And has he been better than Doc Rivers? If we're being honest, like I don't even know. Like Doc Rivers, yes, he choked a lot of
They're like
big
around the
games.
same, like in terms of kind
Yeah,
of how they've been coached, like really good regular season teams. And then when it comes to overall the playoffs, it's just it gets the moments just get way too big for them. Honestly, I mean, Doc Rivers, the only championship that he won specifically was with the '08 Celtics, which legitimately had the prime of the big three. So, I mean, if he could have won with that, I don't know if we'd ever win with anything. So that pretty much just says it all. But ever since the '08 championship, I mean, he's been fairly exposed. So.
Yeah, he has, and that's why, like, when you look at the Clippers, it's like they're running around in circles because Ty Lue has not accomplished more than Doc Rivers did in Los Angeles. Yeah, he got them to the Western Conference Finals, great, but he only won one game. I believe he only won 2 games in that series. They have the better team. I know Kawhi was injured, but this is the problem with the Clippers. If I'm the Clippers right now, Ben, I would get rid of Kawhi Leonard because you're such a liability where I don't even trust you come playoff time. Like, come playoff time, if he plays, that's a surprise. That's how desperate the Clippers have been right now in the Kawhi Leonard era. Like, Kawhi Leonard, if he plays in the playoffs, that's a surprise. If he doesn't play, that's just like a regular thing. You can't have a guy, a superstar, who doesn't show up in the playoffs. And this guy literally doesn't show up. It's not like he's on the court and he just clanks a bunch of shots. I mean, he doesn't even play in the playoffs. So I think for the Clippers, if they want to get better, if they want to get over that hump, and I can't believe their team president, Lawrence Frank, said this after the season where he was asked about the Clippers and what they're doing going forward. He said, I know Kawhi's been hurt the last 3 to 4 years. I know things haven't looked great, but and he said this, and he said this out of his mouth. He said, but maybe next year we'll get over the hump. Like, really? Like, we're gonna try that again and again and again? What are you gonna say after, like, you lose again in the first round next year? Oh, maybe next year we'll get over the hump. Like,
That's
this is a
legitimately the biggest cop out that I've ever seen. It's like, all right, it's just one thing specifically where, like, all right, well, things just obviously didn't go as planned, and we obviously had some guys banged up and this and that. But the fact is that say maybe next year, that pretty much just says that we just weren't good enough, and I essentially just going to throw everybody under the bus.
Yeah, and that just shows me that you're a franchise running around in circles because every year it's like, oh, maybe next year Kawhi will be healthy. Maybe next year Paul George will be healthy. Maybe next year we won't choke. Like, when is there gonna be no next year? When is there
Right.
gonna be, where you're actually making changes? And I like Ty Lue like you. I think he's like a solid coach, but
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't done more than Doc Rivers has done in Los Angeles. I mean, he's done like okay. He's been decent. 5 years, 70 million. That's for coaches that, yeah, I know he's won a championship, but he never won a
Yeah.
championship with you. He won a championship with LeBron. 5 years, 70 million. I think that's way too much. And I think for the Clippers, I just think that they're gonna regret this. Like, I
Oh, yeah.
honestly think they gotta do something. They gotta do something drastic to shake this up. Right now, it's not working. You've only gotten to the Western Conference Finals once. You're basically running around in circles right now. You got to do something if you want to, you know, hopefully get to the next step. Like, you got to make some drastic changes. And I think I personally, Ben, I would have fired Ty Lue after the season because I just think they need to do something drastic. Like, I make some drastic changes there in Los Angeles. For the Clippers, I feel so bad for James. I feel so bad for Clipper fans. I mean, they're just, they're always stuck in the same spot, and that's the worst position to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like you said, I want to be shocked in that overall contract if they move on from him at some point. I think, yeah, they really just kind of they they went over the top with this. I think personally kind of on the earlier side. I think when you look at overall coaching, if I was just the overall managing of it, and it looks like we lost Isaiah here. Looked like he had a little bit of tech issues as he was kind of speaking, but as I kind of take it before he comes back, hopefully. Um, yeah, I mean, the Clippers just have a massive offseason to figure out. And I think when you look at it with Harden, with Paul George, like, of course, you mentioned about Kawhi Leonard in terms of how you think that he would be moved on from. I mean, your best availability is your availability. And that's been something specifically that, yeah, you could be the best stars in the world left and right. But I mean, this might be a bold take for me, but I don't know if Kawhi Leonard is at that superstar level anymore. I think that he is a star player. I think he's a very good player, but superstar players essentially have the availability. They've shown it time to time for sure in the playoffs, obviously. You look at a guy like Giannis. You look at a guy like Jayson Tatum. You look at a guy specifically like Luka Doncic. Guys specifically that go into the playoffs and they are out there on the court. I mean, heck, Kawhi Leonard. I'm just saying it specifically out, and just like unless you legitimately have injury you barely can walk of. I mean, I was just looking at these overall injuries that Kawhi and stuff are having. Just like every single year he's battling with something, and it sucks because I really really love his game, and I just specifically feel like that now there's kind of some players now that I feel like maybe are starting to kind of overtake Kawhi Leonard in terms of the overall categories. And obviously, I think that his defense is some of the best in the league. I think if there's any guy that they have to move on from, personally, I think it's Harden, because I think that Harden, yes, he had a really good time at the Clippers, but I do think that he is just more of a journeyman than anything. I think at this point, once his contract goes up, PG, I think, is going to probably stick around. I think that I know that he, obviously there's reports out in terms of where he could go, but regardless of the fact, Isaiah, of course, Ty Lue getting that massive contract extension, I think says it all. As now we get the Clipper fan himself in this chat. James, it's been a while. I know obviously we're kind of talking right at a time. You probably don't want to talk specifically about this.
Perfect timing, James.
So it's kind of crazy to think that the timing, of course, happened when it did. But yeah, I think specifically that the Clippers just had an offseason where it's going to be a ton of question marks. And, I hope that it works out for you guys. I really do.
It never does, though. Yeah, I'm just.
James, how are you doing tonight, my friend? How are you doing? On the cusp
of ball a lot. I worked out a lot, so I did what I had to do. No, I feel good.
Let's get into your thoughts about your franchise signing Ty Lue to a 5-year, $70 million deal. I know, you and I have talked off the air. You wanted him gone because you wanted a new voice, some drastic changes on the team. But, James, how are you feeling now that Ty Lue is not just staying for 1 year, but staying for the long-term future of the Clippers, and he got paid today by Steve Ballmer and the Clippers?
It's crazy. I was just shocked by that. Like I said, anything to not get him to go to the Lakers, they did that. They just knew that he would go there. I think this time LeBron would have, forced him really to go there to try to capture that, championship Cleveland magic and try to do it in LA. But that's all this was. And you know how teams have done this before. They've been giving out big coaching contracts, and they let him go like 3 or 2 years left with the team. I can see that happening with Tyronn Lue here. I'm worried that Paul George will just opt out and not come back. I'm worried he's going to go to Philly. I'm really worried about that. And then I don't know if Russ wants to come back, if Harden wants to come back. I just don't really know, man. There's a lot of decisions to be made this offseason after a few years of knowing, like, okay, we got everything together. We have the people to do it, so let's do it. But that hasn't happened. It's been really sad.
It would be a really good fit for the Clippers, and I don't know how it would work out, but Mikal Bridges from Brooklyn. I think he's a really young piece. He's a really good player. I think that this is going to be one of the most underrated type of players in the offseason. I think that he's going to be moving on from Brooklyn. I think that they want to go really, really young. Bridges, heck, I could see him going into the other side of New York. I think that the Knicks would be a really fun fit for him. Philly, because obviously he played at Nova. If Philly wants to go, I know they want to try to maybe create a big three. And you guys talk, and obviously LeBron, everybody's going to really want to see what happens with LeBron, this and that. Obviously he's not going to go to the other part of LA. Yeah, I don't think James wants that to see. All in all, him with the Clippers, that would just be like, that would be so weird. But I don't know. But yeah, I think Bridges would be a really fun piece. The reason why I was mentioning Bridges is, like you're saying, James, if a guy like Harden left or PG left, I think you just don't know about Kawhi's availability anymore. for him to essentially be out there. So you need to potentially, hopefully, if you're going to lose a star, replace maybe that's somebody that's a younger type of star like a Bridges. I think it'd be a good fit.
Well,
I don't trust him to do that.
well, and to make matters worse, Ben and James, there were reports that came out, I think, a couple of days ago from Mark Stein that the Clippers are actually looking into bringing in Chris Paul or Kyle Lowry this offseason. So,
No.
I mean,
I saw that Chris Paul might be a Laker as a.
yeah. I mean, I would welcome that because he'd be off the bench, but if you're the Clippers, I think he might be starting because he would be – no, I think he would be off the bench because he would replace Russell
Westbrook. I was about to say. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, if I'm the Clippers, I would rather have Russ than Chris Paul or Kyle Lowry because at this point, you can't depend on Lowry. You can't depend on CP3 to stay healthy. And, yeah, he's wild at
He's
times.
not awful. He's just not the same guy he once was.
No, he's not. But let's sadly transition into another sad franchise, and that is, this is a topic that I've been wanting to talk about, and that is the Detroit Pistons. They have hired Trajan Langdon, former Pelicans GM, now to be their president of basketball operations. And we talked about coaches getting paid, right? Well, Monty Williams got paid last year. I think he got a 6-year, $78 million contract, made him the highest paid coach in NBA history, guys, which was absolutely bonkers. Well, 1 year after that deal and after the Pistons went, I forgot what the record was. They started 3-27. They lost like 25 straight games.
It's like the A's of basketball.
Exactly.
That's the best comp.
The Detroit Pistons, following their hire of Trajan Langdon to be their new president of basketball ops, they're open to eating the remaining $60 million on Monty Williams' contract and paying him for the next 5 years just to sit out and not coach their team. Ben and James, my first thoughts on this is about their president. I think that this might be an indication. First off, it's a good hire for Detroit because the Pelicans, when you think about them, their front office has been really good in terms of finding these hidden gems in the draft and developing them and making them really good NBA players, like guys like Herb Jones and others that have been unearthed, and they've been able to develop a lot of these pieces that you're just like, where do they come from? And also they've been able to get a lot of really good value in the free agent market, like Jonas Valanciunas and others that they've been able to get. So I think it's a good hire for Detroit because they need a guy that can get some value in free agency, get value late in the draft. But also I think that this means that Brandon Ingram might be traded to Detroit because when you look at the Pelicans, they're going to trade Brandon Ingram this summer. That's the report. He just doesn't fit with Zion Williamson. He doesn't fit with what the Pelicans are doing. I think he's going to be traded. And when you think about Detroit, you guys remember the last time Detroit made a big trade for a star, and that was Blake Griffin. They paid a lot to get Blake Griffin. I think they're going to do the same with Brandon Ingram. I think they're going to give up a lot for a middling star like Brandon Ingram because he has that relationship with Trajan Langdon from their days with the New Orleans Pelicans. And so I think that that's what this means. But also the second thing about this is the Detroit Pistons might be saving the Los Angeles Lakers from themselves. And the reason why I say that is because J.J. Redick would be an absolutely god-awful hire by the Lakers. You don't hire a first-time head coach to replace a guy that you complained about that didn't have experience, and now you're bringing in a guy who's never coached before. Like, this doesn't make any sense. But if the Pistons fire Monty Williams, guys, get him on the first plane ride to Los Angeles because Monty Williams is a top head coach in basketball. I mean, this guy's a great X's and O's mind. We saw it in Phoenix. Everybody's going to point at his record in Detroit. Listen, the roster in Detroit was so bad that if you put Greg Popovich or any other Eric Spoelstra, any other great coach there, they probably win the same games that Monty Williams would have had there in Detroit. I mean, his starting center was James Wiseman. Isaiah Stewart was one of their better players. Cade Cunningham missed a lot of time there. You can't win with their roster. It's not coaching. It's the
Mm.
roster was just terrible. So for the
Yeah.
Lakers, if Monty Williams becomes available, I don't care about JJ Redick. You better pause your coaching search and get Monty Williams on the first train or the first plane ride to Los Angeles, because that's got to be our head coach. Like, he's an experienced coach. He's been to the finals. Players got respect for him left and right. I mean, he'd be the perfect coach for the Lakers. Like, Ty Lue would have been perfect, but Monty Williams, if he's available, you better get Monty Williams. And also, Detroit paying him $60 million for the next 5 years. You could literally give Monty Williams $700,000 and he'd take it because he's still living off that Detroit money. So it would be like Russell Wilson jumping from Denver and signing with Pittsburgh. So I think for the Lakers' sakes, please, Detroit, please. I don't want JJ Redick. I want Monty Williams. I've been refreshing my Twitter literally every 10 minutes to see if Monty Williams got fired. Please, like that would be my early Christmas present. Like, I would want Monty Williams. I absolutely do not want JJ Redick or James Borrego or any of these coaches that have gotten fired before that's listed. If Monty Williams is available, please, Detroit, save me from JJ Redick. That's all I would say. But James, I'll give you the floor on this. What's your thoughts on the Pistons hiring Pelicans GM Trajan Langdon to be their new president of basketball ops? Do you think Detroit got it right? Also, what do you think about the lingering Brandon Ingram rumors to Detroit? And also, what do you think about Monty Williams potentially getting fired 1 year into a 6-year, $78 million deal?
Like we talked about last week, man, that Detroit owner, he spends money like crazy, and he makes all the wrong decisions. I think Urinating Tree had a great video about that with the Pistons and that owner. So yeah, that definitely can happen. My hope is that the LeBroners, go get JJ Redick because of their relationship on that podcast. That's the only reason why he should be considered, I guess. That's just the way things are. I don't think it matters who the coach is for the Lakers. It's LeBron who runs everything. So I don't really care who the coach is. It just really doesn't matter. Monty would be feeling the pressure, though, right away. For the Pistons, though, man, getting Langdon, I remember he was a failed, first-round pick with the Cavaliers back in the day, so it's good to hear his name back, in a big spot like this. But damn, he has a lot of work to do. All they have basically is Cunningham, and they don't have a Killian Hayes anymore. I think we talked about that last week.
They got Ivy, Jaden Ivy. It's been all right.
But they have those 3 failed first-round picks on their team.
Kevin Knox
and
Kevin Knox,
Bagley the third or whatever.
He's not there anymore. He's over in Washington.
They released him. They traded him.
Mm-hmm.
All those guys, they're just failed picks, and that year was just bad. Yeah, a lot of freaking work to do, man. And it didn't help that they got the 5th pick only. That really screwed them. They did all that losing for nothing, really. Yeah, he's got a lot of work to do. If somehow, they could trade up or get a gem in the 2nd round, they got to make that happen. It's going to be it's already been a process. It's going to be a longer one. And who the hell would you pick for a coach if Monty left, man? I know the Detroit owner would be stuck in his ways and try to get the biggest name out there for coaching. Whoever would want to come.
Sorry to cut you off, but in terms of potential coaches for Detroit that are listed, potential coaches are like James Borrego, who's the Pelicans offensive assistant, Jaron Collins as well. One name that's been thrown out that has some ties with Trajan Langdon is a couple names actually. JJ Redick, because of their ties with Duke. Another name, and this is kind of interesting, would be Alvin Gentry, the former Pelicans head coach. Yeah, because he has connections there. Also,
Yeah.
Kenny Atkinson. Langdon was,
Yeah.
I think, the Nets assistant GM when he was
Mhm.
there with Brooklyn. So they might try like a Brooklyn situation where you guys remember Brooklyn was so bad, right? They didn't have any draft picks,
Mhm.
traded it all to the Celtics. They didn't really have any future, but then they ended up somehow being good. So maybe they'll hire those guys if Monty did get fired.
Yeah, I don't have anything more of that. I'm gonna switch over to my laptop. Okay, I'll be right back, y'all.
All right.
Right.
But Ben, I want to get your thoughts on this. The Pistons are going to have a big off season ahead of them. They just found their president of basketball operations in Trojan Langdon. What's your overall thoughts on this move? Does this mean that Brandon Ingram could potentially come to Detroit? And what is your thoughts on the Pistons potentially eating 60 million, the final $60 million to owe to Monty Williams? And if you're Detroit, would you fire Monty Williams?
Yeah. Okay. So the first question is about the Pistons, right? In terms of
Yeah,
their
the
offseason.
Langdon move. The Langdon move.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't really know a ton about him. I'm not gonna lie. But regardless, he has a massive. He's a lot of shoes to fill. I think that team specifically is not even rebuilding yet. I think it's just beyond awful. Um, but I think specifically, they're one of the top picks in the NBA draft. They can, hopefully be able to, get a draft pick, that is solid, and then kind of build around. I know Cade's obviously been very good. They have some guys there, but it's just going to take a long, long time to get things going. So I think that he's definitely going to do what he can to kind of get the whole entire organization figured out, and then kind of go from there. In terms for Monty Williams, I think he's probably going to stick around. He might get fired, but I think it's just a matter of like where would he go. I know the Lakers would obviously be a very enticing fit over there, um, but I think specifically there's going to be just a ton of names out there. I mean, Steve Clifford from Charlotte, I think could be a really interesting fit for the Hornets. I mean, not for the Hornets, for the Lakers. Kevin Ollie, former UConn coach, I think would be a really fun fit for the Lakers. I think the Lakers have to get a younger coach, because they obviously have Coach K now, obviously kind of looking over some things. But I think specifically, like James was saying, it doesn't really matter who the Lakers get for a head coach if LeBron's still there. I mean, he's just kind of the one that's kind of the run the show type of thing. Um, and I think specifically it's going to come down to who LeBron wants, if anything. And then in terms of what the fans want specifically, like yourself, Isaiah, and obviously if you guys got Monty, great hire. Um, but I think it comes down to what's the future of LeBron James and LA, and then they find the next head coach.
And then Ben, do you think the Pistons now with Langdon in the fold? There's a lot of rumors that they might go after Brandon Ingram in a trade this offseason because they want to have that that main piece to build around their team. Do you think Detroit should go after Brandon Ingram, especially given the connections to Langdon and also them just wanting that piece, that ready piece to build a team around?
Yeah, sure. I think Ingram would be a really fun piece there. He doesn't have to really deal with a ton of pressure like he was over in New Orleans. It's similar type of style and fit. I think that Ingram is going to be all but gone. I think Zion and McCollum really are kind of the guys now there. And I mean, outside of Detroit, the only place that I've been really hearing a decent amount of is Orlando. I think Orlando has a ton of cap space. I think him with Paulo Banchero, that Magic team is going to be very, very solid for years to come. And I think that a team like Detroit, some younger teams, I think they're going to get some younger talent for them to build off of. So, yeah, of course, for Detroit, I think, I don't think really know how much it's going to improve their overall record with a guy like Brandon Ingram. But I think, him and Cade Cunningham, kind of a second fiddle to Cade, especially if Cade goes down with injuries. Now you have just kind of a focal point with Ingram. And he definitely could average around 20, 22, 24 points just by himself if he's just, I think, a first man option. He really was averaging around 14, 16 points with two other kind of star options they have over New Orleans. So if he kind of has his own overall place, which I think a lot of star athletes kind of want to have at some point if they're kind of a second fiddle to somebody else if they don't want to be there. Yeah, sure. I think you can go to Detroit and ball out. And then, obviously, if it's only just kind of for a short-term type of thing, then he could get a new paycheck and go somewhere else to win. So I think it's kind of a place where it's going to be a short-term type of thing. But yeah, of course, I think Ingram can go to Detroit and definitely thrive for sure.
Yeah. Last thing about the Pistons, last thought I have about the Pistons is, number one, I just don't think Monty Williams' heart, to be honest, is into that job. I mean, you don't first thing that guy uttered out of his mouth when he was asked, like, why choose the Pistons, he literally said the bag, because they paid me the money. Like, you don't say that at a press conference, no matter how much it's true. Like, you don't say, like, oh, I came to Detroit for the money. Like, that just shows your heart is definitely not into it. And also, the thing I'll say about the Redick thing is this. I know we haven't really talked about the Lakers a lot recently, but, we're trying to chase Boston, we're trying to chase Denver, we're trying to chase Minnesota. If you hire JJ Redick, you're not chasing Boston, you're not chasing Minnesota, you're not chasing Denver, you're chasing Duke. That's what you are. And it's going to be a disastrous hire if you end up hiring him.